Hi, and welcome to the Louisiana Children's Museum in Dialogue series. We have a very special guest today because we want to talk about something that's been in the news. There's been a lot of tough stuff in the news lately, and our parents are wondering, how do we talk to our kids about saltwater intrusion, about violence, about all the things that are happening. We had a power outage last night with some heavy weather, so we decided to hack here Dr. Miran Murphy because she's an expert in a lot of things, and she's going to give us some pointers on how to talk to kids about these tough topics. Good news is it's not as threatening to New Orleans and our surrounding areas as we thought it was.
Right.
But before we had that news, we were all pretty anxious.
Right, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Because there's so much uncertainty, and I think that's one of the main things is that we really don't know how climate change is going to affect us and how the saltwater intrusion was going to actually affect our day-to-day lives. We were hearing a lot about like the big picture of what was happening with the river, but what does that mean for us daily? And so I think that's why a lot of people were having a lot of anxiety, and it still will affect probably some areas. We don't know to what extent, but yeah, it's definitely
Or
concerning.
could affect us again in the future.
Right.
And I know, and I guess this is probably one of the biggest problems with adults and caregivers, we don't know what is going on, so we don't even know what to say to our kiddos.
Exactly.
But we've talked to you before about if you're in those tough situations, there are things that you can do no matter what the catastrophe is. So what should we tell our children when they're worried about, let's start with saltwater intrusion?
When talking with our kids about any event, including the saltwater intrusion, we want to understand what they already know about it. So we might say, have you heard about the saltwater that's coming down the river? Have you heard anything about that? Tell me what you know about it. Lots of kids are learning things at school, or just on the radio or on the news. If we have it on at home. Kids are picking things up. We've talked about that a little bit with kids' media exposure, that kids really are listening, even though we may think they're not. Mm-hmm. They hear bits and pieces, and so if we don't help them put it together in a way that makes sense to them, they're going to put it together themselves. Mm-hmm. So we want to understand what they know, help give them any developmentally appropriate language to understand things like, for example, we understand that there's going to be a lot of salt water. Salt water is not healthy for people to drink. So, the city is working on ways to make our water healthy for us. And so just a simple explanation that's matter of fact can be really helpful.
Yeah. It seems like it could be really helpful for all ages, and adults included. What's going on? Right. So how do we as parents cope with all of the scary things beyond just saltwater intrusion that we hear about?
Yeah, it seems like it's never ending, especially after the summer that we had here in New Orleans and all the fires that we heard about in Louisiana and other places. Really, it seems like I don't know if there are more events happening, but definitely they're more intense. So hurricanes are more intense, fires are harder to fight because of the drought. And so, we have a lot to cope with. And I want to just start with saying that we need to focus on hope and like having some optimism. And if we're going to talk about really scary things, we also need to talk about the solutions to those scary things kind of in the same conversation, or it will feel overwhelming to us. We want to limit our media exposure as well. Mm-hmm. We can go down a rabbit hole of doing research and trying to understand things, and maybe we feel like it's our duty or responsibility to really understand, why certain things are happening in our environment. But there's got to be a limit to that. We've got other responsibilities and other things that we can focus on as well. So I think we need to limit our media exposure. So that means maybe turning off the TV at home when you're sort of in between activities. You don't need to have the TV on all the time, especially with news on. Limiting social media. A lot of people we're learning about the saltwater intrusion from kind of neighboring parishes, and so people would report things that were happening to their pets, and we really don't know, how truthful it is if it's just coming from, for example, Facebook. We really don't know about the facts of that. So we want to kind of understand like what are reliable sources of information, and also help our kids understand that as well, that everything that they hear may not be actual fact. So for parents, again, limiting our exposure, putting time limits on how much time you're actually gonna spend researching something. Like really, you might need to set a timer because we can get really lost.
This
in
link
that.
connects us to this link, and
Exactly. Exactly. And then recognize we're not alone. So talk to our friends and our family about our fears and concerns, and what can we do? How can we come together as a community? There are lots of efforts happening, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, about how we can kind of join these efforts to do something about it and feel more empowered.
I think there might be, for a parent, a fine line between like overly optimistic and hopeful. I can hear, oh, it'll be fine, don't worry about it, babe.
Yeah.
But there's like, I really liked how you said the city's going to be taking care of it. Just keeping it simple and vague, and just moving on. I think that's great advice. Thank you. So when they are hearing these things, these scary things, what are some feelings that children might be experiencing?
Yeah, it's a long list, especially depending on how directly they've been impacted by these things. So if they've had a loss, in a fire or something, in a hurricane, obviously they're going to be having some grief or maybe trauma around those losses. But also just kind of general anxiety, worry about what's going to happen, how's it going to affect them, are we prepared, are we going to have enough drinking water, how can I help my family or my friends, and some older kids may be really frustrated and kind of feeling like, you grown-ups messed this up. You knew about climate change, for a long time. You've known about this,
right.
And now this is affecting kind of my daily life. So older kids may be thinking, feeling like maybe even a little betrayal by the grown-ups around them, that we're not doing more to kind of save the earth for them, or kind of help them, live more comfortable lives.
Yeah.
So there's just really a range of feelings that kids can have, even into depression and feeling like there's just really no hope. I think that's part of it, is that some people, if you really are impacted by these events and feel like there's no way out, there's no solution, that it's just going to get worse and worse, that's going to lead to feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, and maybe even depression.
Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, we have more bad news with the violence that's going on in the world, and I know kids are going to hear about that as well. Can you give us some advice on how to discuss things that aren't weather related, aren't climate related, with kiddos?
Yeah. Yes, it's very, very, very upsetting. And kids are hearing about that. Kids are seeing images of children being hurt or killed, and other people being killed. And we need to help them understand that they're safe. So if there's no direct threat to them, help them feel safe within the relationship, within their caregiving relationship, within their family, in their community. Unfortunately recognize that, us as adults need to recognize that war often impacts children the most. Children lose their parents, they can be seriously injured. And so it is really scary to think about the impact of that on children. Again, we have to protect ourselves, though. We need to stay focused for our children and help them not feel like they're not safe if they are. Mm-hmm. Certainly, a lot of people have loved ones who are in harm's way, and kids may hear about that, and kids may feel very sad about that, and that's okay. Just encourage them to talk about their feelings, just like adults can talk about their feelings with other adults, and maybe a little bit with your children. It's okay for your children to see you have emotions. We don't want them to think that you don't have emotions, but just say, I'm feeling really sad about this right now, but I'm gonna go for a walk, and I think that'll help me feel better. Or just talking about it with you for a little bit made me feel better. So really helping them express their feelings, again, find out what they know about it, because we don't really always know what their friends may be saying,
what
or
they're hearing at school.
So I think a lot of the same advice applies in terms of really listening to our kids, telling them things at a developmentally appropriate level, helping them identify their feelings, and if they're feeling despair or angry or upset or sad, helping them learn to cope with that and ground within themselves, and connect with their family and friends, and find ways to sort of, again, have hope
Right.
that we will get through this.
And it's you just mentioned that all of this modeling that you're doing for your children. I'm processing this too, and I'm sad too. And it's so important for them to see that this is how you handle your big emotions. Look at what mom's doing. Look at what dad's doing. Yeah. What are we looking for? Like, what are some signs of anxiety in children that we need to be like? That's something that concerns us.
Right, right. So even young kids, even down to infants, 3 to 5 month old kids can pick up on parents' anxiety. So they're not going to have obviously an awareness of what's happening in the world, but if the parents are nervous, they can pick up on that. They may show, excessive crying or not being able to be consoled, fearfulness, not wanting to sort of go into new situations and explore as young infants and toddlers. School age, they may not want to go to school. They may talk about their worries a lot, talk about fears. They may have fears that are not directly related to, whatever the event is, but kind of new fears that pop up that seem like, they really have nothing to do with it, but it's just their way of expressing their general concern or general anxiety. And then certainly crying and maybe isolating, withdrawing, not wanting to do the things that they typically enjoy doing. Into adolescents who may cope by using substances or sort of feeling like it doesn't matter, so they can sort of go, do things that might be a little reckless for them. So there's really a range of things that we want to look for.
So if I'm a parent and I'm trying to get my child to calm down, but I can't calm myself down. I know you said that we should talk to our peers. What are some other things that we can do just so that we are not exuding the anxiety?
Right. Yeah, I think learning to ground ourselves internally, helping, and this will model for our kids they can sort of learn to ground themselves. And when I say ground, I mean connect with like what's going on with you and your body. So how are you feeling? Like where are you carrying the anxiety? Like for example, I carry it in my shoulders, and my shoulders lift up, or my muscles might tense. I might feel really hot. You might be able to notice that your heart's racing, or you're having trouble breathing. Just recognizing all those signs in your body and just simply relaxing. I mean, kids pick up on our tense bodies, and they mirror that, right? And so if we can sort of relax and teach them to take deep breaths and slow breaths, just take a little break. You don't want to call it a timeout for those kids for whom timeout is punishment, but a little break, a time to connect with our bodies, a time to connect with each other. And that will teach them, how to just be aware of their bodies, but also the world around them. Just noticing, the wind blowing, the water. I'm seeing the water move outside. Yeah. Now finally the weather is nice. It's like cooler, and we can kind of enjoy it more and just kind of relax and be more in touch with nature as well.
Very calming. Come to the Louisiana Children's Museum in our big backyard. Yes. So a lot of these things are related to climate change. How do we teach young children about climate change?
Yeah. So getting into nature. I heard a stat the other day that was just so surprising to me, that we spend about 90% of our lives indoors.
Wow.
Which is like, for a person like me, who I try to get outdoors a lot, even for a person who's intentional about trying to get outside, I'm probably not out as much as I think I am. So really getting outside. I love that the Children's Museum has indoor and outdoor play, gardens outside, but even just like the surrounding area of the park, trying to get out. If you're not in a place where you can really play outside. I mean, a lot of people don't live in places where they can just go for a walk in their neighborhood. So really trying to get to a park, or getting outside on a balcony, trying to really enjoy the outdoors and connect with nature. I think if it's not, right in front of kids, they don't really understand it, right? So they need like the sensory experience of being outside and touching leaves and going for a walk, and even noticing like insects and changing of the color of the leaves or flowers, or the smells and sounds that they hear in nature can help kids connect with that and realize that the earth is, a beautiful place and worth protecting. And so we want to teach kids about taking care of our earth, just like we take care of ourselves and take care of, our bodies and stay healthy. We want to keep the earth healthy. we model for our kids. So if they see us toss the trash out of the car window, that's what they're going to learn. And really helping the, or if you see somebody else doing that, helping them understand that, like, what the impact of that is. That trash is going to be around for a very long time. Not only kind of making our environment look ugly, but just it's gonna damage our surroundings. It could end up in water. Animals can choke on it. So making it like meaningful to them. So a lot of kids like animals and they want to understand, like, really their habitats and how they survive, and making it relevant for them, I think, is important. And that really means getting out in nature.
The museum is part of a partnership with 4 other children's museums in the country. We're all part of an initiative called Caretakers of Wonder, and it'll be about teaching young children about climate change. So
Wow,
we're really excited about that.
Yeah.
We'll have some more programming. We're in the planning phases right now.
Oh, fantastic.
But it's really great to hear what the different bioregions are experiencing, and ours is living with water, and that's basically what we have to deal with a lot here.
Right.
So, but we do have that big, beautiful backyard, and we are in City Park. And the great thing about New Orleans is there are a lot of corner parks, corner playgrounds.
Yeah.
So if you can get to those, try to get to those and be out in nature.
Yeah, and you said something that made me think of something else, that learning to live with water. Like, another thing we can teach kids is that people, animals are adaptable. Like, we have learned to adapt to lots of different circumstances. Teaching them about cities that, like in Venice or, in other countries that have a lot of water, and they've been able to adapt and sort of build whole societies and cities in those environments, and that we can do that, in different ways here. Or, and that we've survived, and like certain species of animals and insects have survived all this, all these many years, and we can do that too, even though it feels like it's getting harder and harder. We are adaptable and we are resilient.
And we actually have a program for 3rd graders called Living with Water. And one of their design challenges is to create a housing structure that can withstand flooding and erosion. So we know that it's important to get the young group to understand these concepts,
Right.
to help us get out of the mess that we've caused.
Yeah.
Before we talk about this instilling hope, did you want to talk a little bit about, well, maybe this is about that, the programs that are out there that we can become involved in?
Yes, yeah. So, I'm thinking of even the City Park planning process. So that's something that's obviously, it's been open to the community, but, really thinking about, what do you want your park to look like? What do you want to get out of your space? And I love how, for example, like natural a lot of it is, and so overgrown. And I mean, I think that's important for us to kind of see that how wild nature can be, and how we can live with that. But getting involved with political action groups or community action groups. I don't have anything specific in mind outside of that, but there are some on a small scale and on a larger scale. So lots of people can do things around their school. So, I've heard about schools that have climate change or climate action groups at their schools, and that really helps them connect with other students who are like-minded in the sense that they care about, this issue, and that they want to do something about it. That can help kids feel empowered, and adults as well.
And we have, we were just talking with our arts and culture director about mutual aid, and there is an organization that got together. What's the organization? Imagine Waterworks, to help when we thought that the saltwater intrusion was going to be a lot worse than it is, fingers crossed, that they were collecting water jugs and filling up water bottles and making, trying to ease some of the anxiety of people in the community. But they asked any of us if we wanted to get involved. So those are some things that perhaps families could do together. Yeah, I think they could do, if you want to empower your little ones, say this is what we're doing, we're helping. A lot of those you can do with your kiddos.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So very concrete things like, filling up water bottles, checking on your neighbors. What do they need? Can we bring them something from the store, a bottle of water from the store? Or, really caring about your community as well.
So going back to, because this is recorded and we will have this for the next disaster that we have to deal with, I in a nutshell, I think we are hearing stay hopeful, be concrete. You know, this is what I know. What are some, because when we're ending a meeting here, we say, let's have an optimistic closure. So how can we instill hope in our children as best as we can without glossing over the issues?
Right. We want to be matter of fact and realistic. Yeah, not just saying it's going to be okay. It takes a lot of work to be okay. But again, anytime you talk about a problem, talk about some of the solutions. So with the saltwater intrusion, talk about what's being done. You know, there was a lot of press about the solution and the potential, you know, the pipeline that was going to be built. And so talking to kids about that, but also that, you know, helping them know that we as parents are prepared too. So not only is we're working on the grand scheme, but also within our household, how we can kind of prepare ourselves. So anytime, you know, we talk about the gloom and doom, we've got to talk about solutions and the hopeful aspect, and again, focusing on resilience.
I did feel better when the news started to let us know what the plans were, what some possible solutions were.
Right.
The same applies for a hurricane's coming.
Yeah.
You know, so when a hurricane is coming and we're all feeling a little anxious, we use the same advice for our kiddos.
Exactly.
And turn off the TV. And
Right.
Yeah.
So prepare, make a plan, you know, ahead of time. I feel like we're sort of in a lull with, you know, climate change right now. This is the time to prepare. You know, lots of people may have stocked up on bottled water. Well, we're going to use that for the next event that happens, or, you know, hurricane season's not even over yet. So yeah, make a plan, prepare, let your kids know in on the plan. I think kids want to be a part of the solution and the plan. And so letting them know simply what the plan is and how they can help and what they might need to do, what their important roles might need to be. If there's a little bag you pack for them, you know, to make sure they have their important things ready to go if you need to evacuate and things like that.
our power went out last night and we didn't have batteries in the house. So we're not prepared.
Time to stock up.
Yeah, it's time to stock up on these things.
Right.
That's great advice. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's cooler now. Let's all get out in nature and
Yes.
you know, and enjoy our world around us and appreciate it.
That's a great optimistic closure. Go outside, enjoy the world around you, come to the Children's Museum and play with us, and just stay optimistic, and we're here for you. So thank you so much for making us feel better.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.